Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film would become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello folks, welcome back to part 2 of the podcast where we are talking Ridley Scott films 2. The sequel, that's right, it is sequel time as we are relating the episode.
This whole year has been sequels.
Relating the podcast to Gladiator 2. And as you guys already know, this is the part where we take a look at your Instagram responses from the previous episode. And that previous episode was on Patrick Swayze films. And my girlfriend, Ellie, went with Dirty Dancing, classic from her. Anton Kinlove went with Ghost. Andrew Corns from the Revisionist Almanac podcast went with Point Break. The Yankee B cast went with Point Break as well. Movie Bonerz apparently went with Red Dawn.
That would be a Jake call.
Yeah. One of Us is Bored. Sam went with I'm Basic, Dirty Dancing. Claire from Why the Flick went with Dirty Dancing as well. And Comfort Films went with Roadhouse. Ooh. Yeah. Which is awesome.
Yes.
Dustin, I am intrigued. What film did you go for Patrick Swayze?
Oh, man. Point Break. Like, I don't know what Jake is doing in his world. Red Dawn is awesome. And I know he adores that movie, but Point Break, 100%. That's not even... I'm going to have to text that boy and be like, Red Dawn.
Yeah, I would not recommend listening to our episode on that then.
No, I genuinely enjoy Red Dawn. Don't get me wrong. It's a great movie. I just I got to give Jake a little hell, you know.
Okay, yeah. So it's my choice then, guys. So when I was having a look at, like, Ridley Scott films to choose, and I was just like, okay, we've covered a lot of Ridley Scott films already. What kind of ones intrigue me now? I was having a look at The Last Duel. I quite enjoyed that one. The House of Gucci, absolutely not. Like one of the funniest sex scenes I've ever seen in that. I was like,
I never even watched it. I heard it was so bad.
Yeah, I couldn't get through it, frankly. But then I realized, I was like, holy shit, we've not covered Blade Runner yet on the show. So I was like, I have to pick Blade Runner, the final cut.
Yes.
From 1982, the sci-fi classic that is Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
So initial reactions for me, like I was kind of completely blown away, really, the first time I saw this. I've seen it quite a few times, and I think it's one of those films where I feel like you frankly see more imagery in there every time you watch it. It's so dense and detailed with what's going on screen. There's so many kind of extras and background characters in there that are just really interesting to watch, and certainly from a screenplay and all the questions that the film asks at the end especially, it's still very ambiguous, and I love a ambiguous story, and you know, this is no different. And I really like it when films ask you a lot of really deep questions, and certainly Blade Runner delivers on that aspect for sure. Brilliant, masterfully done by Ridley Scott. And obviously there's a lot of like behind the scenes stuff, that it was a very difficult shoot, a lot of money issues as well. A lot of different cuts. I think there's literally like 5 different cuts to this film.
Yeah.
There's a cut, I think there's like theatrical cut, then there's like a studio cut where they have Harrison Ford do voiceover. There's an actual director's cut, and then there's a director's cut where they kind of use a lot more of the updated technology in 2007 to fix a few things. So yeah, there's a lot of different versions out there, but I think certainly I would definitely say the the final cut is probably the best one. Yeah, initial reactions for you, Dustin?
Well, so Jake and I, we actually did a whole Blade Runner episode where we did both of them. We did Blade Runner and then Blade Runner 2049. Love Blade Runner. Not at first. Actually, originally when I was a kid, my dad had told me that I might find it a little boring and just not quite what I thought it would be. It grew on me when I was older and watching it. I love it to death now. I think it is a fantastic movie. I agree with you. The final cut really is the only version that works the best. Theatrical cut it's good. It's cool. But the final cut just seems to have the better blend of editing. The theatrical directors, which was actually studio. Then you have the directors, and then you've got the TV cut, and then you have the final cut. And they each have or take away stuff. There's Unicorn. The Unicorn Dream is in... Oh, shoot. I can't remember which one. I think it's the first director's cut and the TV cut.
Right.
Which is just... There's a lot of oddities.
Definitely not in the voiceover cut.
Oh my gosh. The voiceover is so bad. Jake and I talk about that quite a bit, if I remember right. Yeah. Voiceovers in movies are sometimes good ideas. They work. And then at other times you're like, this is not good. Especially when it's so obvious that your actors are so done with the whole thing. Like you can tell Harrison, I don't know. If you've ever heard Harrison Ford's voiceover, you can tell that the whole time he's just like, thank God I'm getting paid because this is terrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was on record of saying like he was not a fan of the voiceover
right
of the script. So.
He did not try to hide that. I will tell you if you've seen that cut. No, Blade Runner, like as an adult, it is such a cool movie. It's really well done. I agree with you. There is so much in the world that they have built, especially when it's in the like ground level. With Deckard eating his noodles, there's so much happening in the background and around him that it's so claustrophobic, but that's what the world they've built it. It's the attention to detail in Blade Runner is excellent. And for a movie made in 1982, 82, it still blows me away when I was just watching it the other night where I was like, dude, some of these scenes with the special effects look so much better than like half of the crap that's coming out today. It will always blow me away when older films do special effects better. With less money, less technology, like less patience. It's unreal to me, the difference. Blade Runner is fantastic. It's such a cool movie.
I mean, I could literally just watch it on a loop. It's that good, I would happily just watch it all day.
Man, that 80s like synthesizer music though, it might lull you into some deep sleep for a little while. So those long tracking shots at the beginning with the Tyrell Corporation, like you might fall asleep. You might not make it more than 2 viewings back to back.
No, I'm there, man. I'm there. I'll be fine. Absolutely.
I didn't say a nap would be a bad thing. I mean, that's...
this film is my drug of choice. This is my dope of choice. So.
Man, you can have so much worse. Stick with this. Pure. Stick with this.
It's pure. So what happens in Blade Runner? Well, as is traditional now, going to IMDb, which states...
to read the synopsis?
Yep.
Come on, man. Explain it without IMDb.
A Blade Runner must pursue and terminate 4 replicants who stole a ship in space and have returned to Earth to find their creator. What's really interesting, certainly, with what happens in Blade Runner, it's kind of a very simple story, but it's very film noir-y. It follows a lot of the same tropes that a film noir follows, but the questions it asks are very deep, and it's very subtly done with the love story between Deckard and Rachel, and it's just very intriguing of what they think of each other and what they think they are themselves. Do they think they're actually replicants or humans? It's just very, very interesting. So, this very simple story, which I've talked about in a lot of our episodes. I love it when stories kind of are very simple, and yet it allows all these kind of rich themes to come through on this simple framework. And, Blade Runner is no different here. So, directing then, the opening scenes are just a joy to watch for me. I basically just love how the film just gives you time to let the atmosphere of this film kind of soak over you. I love the cityscape scenes in the beginning. And at first you think you've just been dropped into an action scene as these explosions go off, but no, it's just the power plant towers giving off flames. I also just love this gradual cutting to the offices inside the Tyrell building in LA with the eye shot there too, just to give you this great sci-fi feel with the kind of the reflections of the city in the eye. That was very cool. And obviously you get that in the sequel to reference that. Then I loved the contrast to the office scene where this guy is testing a replicant, Leon, and it's very quiet and the set is very plain with the odd bit of kind of sci-fi tech in there. Then all of a sudden the interviewer is blown away quite spectacularly through the door, through the wall. That was great to see. Then when we meet Deckard on street level, the level of detail in the production design is incredible. The neon lights are everywhere you look, extras everywhere you look. Then when we go up in the car and fly through LA, Ridley again gives you a chance to let the atmosphere wash over you, but in a more kind of joyful way, especially with the change in music tonally. It reminded me a lot of 2001 as well with the music when the characters arrive at this space station. They're just look, you're in space, enjoy it. And I think Ridley is doing a similar thing here, in a way. Look, you're flying in a car. This is fucking awesome. And it is.
Look, it's a sci-fi movie. Enjoy it.
Yeah. I know it sounds kind of daft maybe to say that out loud, but that's what it's showing to me, It's just this is so cool. Enjoy it right now. Let it soak over you.
Well, we already mentioned the attention to detail with the background with Deckard. I think the interview with Leon is such a cool way to start this story.
Yeah.
Because you get your text scroll at the beginning, so you kind of have an understanding of what you're about to watch. But to start the whole thing off with that test that they do, and then for the murder that happens, which, by the way, man, space guns or guns in general in the 70s and 80s. Wow.
They're powerful.
They are powerful. Running through a big old wall. I love it. I think it's so cool. I love what happened to watching just the joy of seeing people get tossed through walls like they used to in the action movies. Come on, people. Yeah. But yeah, when you go to Deckard on the street level, him ordering the noodles, and my favorite part of that sequence is how claustrophobic and the rain and just
it's always raining.
It's always raining.
I love that.
There's no dry scene in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Except for right before he chases the snake lady into the rain.
Turns on like a tap, dude.
Right. One of my favorite things. So you said it's when they're flying, when they get Deckard into the car to go and meet the sergeant or the captain. I'm always I don't take it as it's a sci-fi movie. Just enjoy it with the scenery or feel great. I actually take it the opposite way, but in matching your enjoyment of it because of how noir Blade Runner actually is, where you're this is cool. I get to see this story develop now. You brought up people might think this is you're in for an action-packed movie. There's no action in this movie.
No.
There's a little bit, but it's so minimal. But I think the lack of action is actually the strength of the movie.
The production design does a lot of the legwork with the visual interest here. As we said from the top, it's so detailed. And certainly the one scene that shows off the dense feeling and the detail quality of this film is the chase scene through the streets with Deckard chasing Zora, the snake lady, It's not that fast paced either, but I think Ridley uses this environment to his advantage, where Deckard loses sight of Zora a few times, and even when I'm watching it, I've got to really kind of scan the screen to try and find her.
Yeah, you lose track of her.
Yeah, Ridley definitely puts you in Deckard's shoes without really using too many point of view shots either. There's like a little moment around like a bus that establishes some geography, but other than that, like geography is not really important in the scene, I wouldn't say.
No.
Especially like his brother Tony Scott didn't really use geography in his action scenes at all. You're just trying to like sieve your way through all these characters, like the different types of people on show as well is insane. Like I saw monks, I saw nuns, and I saw a dude with like this Knight Rider style goggles. That was very cool. I feel like you can find someone new that you haven't spotted before on every watch in any of the scenes, frankly.
You know, I poked fun at the costumes in American Gangster, but man, there's something about costumes in futuristic movies, especially from the 70s and 80s, that you're like, man, I really hope we don't go that route. Like, like Zora's, she's wearing the raincoat, but then that like breastplate thing that she wears every time I watch this movie, when she puts it on, I'm like, how does that even stay on? Wearing a coat or not? This doesn't seem like practical clothing for even this world, because it's raining. I feel like the level of danger on the streets would be higher, but you're wearing this outfit. Is it an outfit? I
feel like I'm very disappointed we don't have like the glow stick umbrellas, though.
I would be up for that. That would be cool.
I'm very disappointed in the world that we don't have that now.
You know what's great about the production, though, in Blade Runner? For it being as futuristic-y or as sci-fi that it is, it still feels grounded.
Oh, yeah.
It still feels gritty, dirty. It doesn't feel like they go overboard too much with the futuristic-y aspect that sci-fi can pretty much do a lot of the time. But that's one of my favorite things, is how dirty the movie actually feels. Like, I love the grime of Blade Runner. It's so good.
And also what's really interesting about the design of everything is that you feel like, you know, LA, and they kind of get into this a little bit in the sequel as well, is that LA is this huge mega city that all these kind of different cultures are being mashed together. There's certainly a lot of Asian, Chinese, Japanese influences here, Korean, of course. But you feel like every set has a very unique feel as well, in terms of culture, not necessarily design. Like there's that bar scene as well before he finds the Snake Lady Zora. And it almost feels like a 1920s party, you know, with all this glitter and glam. But you get that kind of cultural influence, but again, it just has this very sci-fi feel that you've not really seen this type of thing before as well, you know. So it's just a great blend of culture and sci-fi, and certainly Sebastian's house as well, which I'll talk about later, and it has this very grand gothic feel to it as well. Yeah, so good.
It's so good.
I love Rutger Hauer in this film. Yeah, I love Rutger Hauer in this film. I feel like every scene he's in, the film gets more kind of gothic and sort of horror-inspired almost when he meets Sebastian in his apartment. And it has this very like historical gothic feel to it. Plus it feels very weird, and obviously like Sebastian's genetic toys, as he calls them.
His toys.
with random like medical equipment in there, with that massive medical light above a pool table. It's just very odd to see that, but weirdly works.
Sebastian's little toy friends. By the way, I don't know a single person that would have that kind of stuff and be like, I sleep fine at night. Are you kidding me? Yeah. You're like inviting this stuff to kill you in the night. And I get Puppet Master didn't come out for another 10 years or whatever it was. But I can't help but feel like there's some influence from Blade Runner into Puppet Master, just with the aspect of these things being like, we're friendly, die. Yeah. Like the dude at the table after Batty shows up, or Rutger Hauer, when he shows up, there's that guy sitting at the table, the toy, but he's got like the human head, the human face, is just looking around. It's freaking.
Yeah, very freaky.
Like, no.
Yeah, it's got a giant nose.
But that scene is fantastic. That's one of the most tense scenes, I think, in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
All around. The moment Batty walks into the house, it's just like, because you don't know, but you know how things will and kind of have to play out, and you're not enjoying that. You just don't know when or how. So,
like the scene is very kind of darkly lit too, and there's barely any like color compared to a lot of Harrison Ford scenes, especially street level. It's also feels very grungy and damp. It just feels very wet.
Everything feels so like
inside.
Like you feel that it's wet, but it's not that like, oh, it's rain wet, which you get that sense. But inside Sebastian's house, or inside a lot of the buildings, actually, with maybe the exception of Tyrell's room, you feel like the walls would be moldy. Like there's certain scenes where you're like, I can almost smell that rotted, soaking wet, like building smell. It's just Blade Runner is a unique film. It really is.
And there's definitely like an old meets very new feel in the sets as well. You definitely certainly fear for Sebastian's life from a production design point of view. That just, as I said, like enhances Rutger Hauer's character. Then when they get to Tyrell's apartment, it's more of a grand gothic feel with candle lights everywhere. You're like in Dracula's futuristic apartment, but Rutger Hauer is Dracula. Like the way he gives him the way he gives him the kiss of death and crushes his skull was very gnarly to watch. Just pure horror at that point.
Tyrell's room, or his apartment, office place, his place of dwelling, it's very boastful, right? It's very grandiose. It's like the cleanest part of probably the whole city that you get that feeling of, but it's also kind of the place where you understand like, ooh, questionable moral decisions have been made here. And I like that. I like that with Batty showing up into the room is kind of that understanding of the consequences of those poor decisions have come home. Like, hey, your actions have consequences, and here it is. So,
you're getting your skull crushed. But certainly with the feel of it, going back to this kind of old meets new type feeling, you have this feel throughout most of the film, and it definitely gives this grounded quality. Like you feel it on the streets, you feel it in like all of the buildings, all of the apartments that they go to. It's all very mixed in, and it doesn't feel like a tonal mess, even though aesthetically it feels a mess sometimes, but obviously that's the point. But it's just, even like the dirty sets like in Sebastian's house just feel beautiful as well, like in a way.
Well, I think it feels natural. Like in that kind of world, it's not one of those things where you're like, I guess I'm suspending belief even of how someone's home is going to look. You kind of understand like everyone is going to live kind of like this hoarder lifestyle, right? They've come across this stuff, so they're going to keep it just in case they're able to use it later on. It's almost like this embrace of, you either have nothing or you're going to have as many things as possible to do what you can with it, whether it's good, whether it's just to hold on to a semblance of what used to be or what should be. But it all feels purposeful, and it all feels natural. When you're in Deckard's apartment, everything that they kind of focus on and stuff in the background, you feel, Deckard would have this. And if you question, like at first where you're like, why would he have a piano? He seems so like, ugh. But then you understand that it's like his memories of it. So he's a guy who is kind of hopeless and just nihilistic almost, who's fighting that throughout this movie, but he holds on to this little piece as kind of a piece of humanity for him to hold on to. And I think that's a cool thing. It's a good detail.
Absolutely. I think my favorite scene is, I think, that last action scene I loved with Deckard and Roy. I think it was quite hard to choose, frankly, but I think I ultimately went with this last scene with Deckard and Roy Batty, Rutger Hauer's character. It's almost like a haunted house movie in moments, in this old, drenched and decaying building where Roy Batty is howling at Deckard in moments. Like, Roy Batty is so unpredictable, where he like pulls a nail out of some wood and puts it through his hand to sort of like feel alive before he dies, you know.
Feel alive and kind of help combat the rigor mortis that's actually setting in, because he's already kind of lived longer than he was initially supposed to. Him punching his head through the wall to watch Deckard run away.
Yeah, you get those,
that always like.
You get these great shots of his hand, you know, all clenched. That was really interesting. Rutger Hauer like rams his head through the wall, as you said, to surprise him. That was very bizarre and kind of just very menacing at the same time. And I also love the lighting too, where these beams of light pass through all the holes in the building, and some of them are kind of moving all the time, like there's constant flying traffic around. Again, just builds this constant atmosphere. Just again, very atmospheric and void of color compared to the beginning of the movie when they end, and then when they end up on the roof. I just love how they kind of stay on Roy Batty's face as he's saying those iconic final lines, and the backlighting brings back kind of the neon colors, and it just looks stunning. And I actually like the acting from Harrison Ford too, where in that moment he feels very scared to begin with, but as the scene goes on, like the fear fades away, and he actually kind of looks quite sorry for him as he's dying. That was really interesting to watch. And it's kind of reflecting his own thoughts as well. Like, am I human or am I a replicant as well? When you're watching him die.
Yeah, you can see the conviction in him. I think that scene is actually, the whole chase scene, I think, is actually some of the best acting from Ford in that movie. There's a couple scenes that I feel is not Ford's best acting that he's ever done, but some of that I think comes from just behind the scenes crap that was going on, because no one was getting along. You had a lot of studio interference. So there's some scenes where I'm like, I feel like this was a over it scene. But I'm with you. Trying to pick a favorite scene, I was like, man, don't be cliche. Don't say Batty sitting on the roof with his iconic lines.
Sorry, I did that.
But it's one of those movies. It comes down to, so I have two favorite scenes and then one favorite detail. But the favorite scene comes down to two scenes. It's either Rachel's test,
right?
Because I love how it's shot. With the close-ups. I love the lighting on it with the owl, and then the splicing with the owl in it.
Yeah.
But just the cigarette smoke going up in front of her face. It's so
good,
film noir, but it packs such a punch. That whole scene packs such a punch for what you're watching. And then the roof. I mean, how can you not love the roof? It's so good.
You can really feel the rain in that moment, and his bleached blonde hair kind of really comes through with the red and green lights.
It's just like, and his lines and the way that he delivers the lines, it's such a understanding of how grounded he becomes, and then he's calling everybody out on this. It's like, you understand these moments are washed away. Never to be seen, never to be heard of again. It does pack a decent amount of weight. My favorite detail, though, is after Deckard gets the crap kicked out of him, and it's him and Rachel in his apartment after she saved him from Leon.
Yeah.
And he takes a shot, but not the full shot. He starts doing it, and then he's interrupted. But when he pulls a shot glass down, you see a little bit of blood trickle into the drink. And I think the detail of that is so great. it speaks volumes for the movie as a whole with that attention to detail, where it's like you never see that in movies. In fact, I don't know if I can think of a movie off the top of my head that does this attention to detail after someone's beat up and takes a drink where you're still bleeding. Your mouth bleeds for a while. Like, it's like a head wound. It doesn't just, we're good. It's, you're bleeding.
Yeah, and this is not a particularly like violent film, and I mean it's a sci-fi film,
right?
With a few action scenes, and to have that level of detail was quite remarkable, and it all plays into
it's so good.
His character dynamics with Rachel as well, with what they're going through.
Yeah, I would say on a of course level, the rooftop would be my favorite scene. If I had to pick a scene that I was like, I'm not cliche, ha ha ha, it would be the Rachel interview scene.
Directing score for you, Dustin. What are you going for?
Man, the directing score. This is like trying to rate this one on a few of these categories is a little bit difficult for me.
Yeah.
Because trying to be fair in understanding the studio interference during the production, the budget issues.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford and Ridley Scott not getting along. Ridley Scott not getting along with half of the cast and the crew. I think there was a lot behind the scenes that played against Blade Runner's favor, but Blade Runner came out great.
Eventually.
Directing score, I would actually kind of go with like a 8 flat, just in terms.
Wow.
I think that's still pretty good because of all the behind the scenes crap that was going on. He still pulled this off and still delivered a fantastic movie. So
right.
I'll go with an 8 flat.
Okay. Well, I'm going pretty high. I freaking love this film. So, as we've already said, like the level of detail, I could watch this on a loop happily and not fall asleep. It's just so rich. And again, I feel like you can really see something new just in the details in every watch, and just really well done. And I think Ridley Scott really recognizes that he doesn't have to do too much with the camera to really show off this world, because it's all there in front of the camera anyway. So it's just a few subtle things that Ridley Scott is doing to really capture this in a really moody way. And just, if anything, this feels more like a film noir movie, a straight up film noir film, than a sci-fi film.
I agree with that.
You know, it's just like a film noir movie with flying cars, and robots. And the heart of this story is a film noir, and certainly Ridley, I think, recognizes that in the direction as well. He's not really trying to do anything massively fancy with the camera. It's all about visual intrigue, and that's what it is with it's all about in film noirs as well. Like, stylistically, that's a big point for those movies in the 40s and 50s as well. So I'm going a 9.5 for me.
Whoa, you went really high.
Yeah.
Me scoring it an 8, I love Blade Runner, so don't get me wrong. It is an incredible film. I give it that 8, like I said, just because of
it's fine. I'll forgive
the
you.
behind the scenes stuff. You better. Dang it.
Screenplay, then, as I've kind of mentioned already, I think ultimately this is a very simple story in a fairly typical film noir fashion. The detective has to find criminals and find the clues, but it's the atmosphere details, the bigger questions and dark emotional themes that make film noirs very compelling to watch. And it's no different here, but with added sci-fi. Deckard is asked, and has no choice, to find these 4 Nexus 6 replicants who have gone rogue. That's basically the story, and take them down. But what's interesting is that his captain asks him to go test a Nexus 6 at the Tyrell building, and you're like, oh, well, she's not on the list. It must be just kind of an exercise or just practice for Deckard. He must be rusty or something. Okay, let's just go with it. So when Deckard is done testing Rachel, the Nexus 6, Tyrell says that her test took longer because he's basically given her memories in an attempt to keep their emotions in check. So she's basically like a new experimental Nexus 6. But he also says that she doesn't actually know she's a replicant, which opens up this whole world that anybody could be a replicant and not know it. So from then on, you're looking at every character very differently, and certainly one of those characters is Harrison Ford for sure.
It's Deckard.
Yeah, so just a really kind of fascinating scene when Harrison Ford is interviewing Rachel. Yeah, really, really great for me. Opens up all these questions.
Oh, yeah. I think it's, like I said, I mean, obviously I love it. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. The dialogue during it, I love his questions to her because they're questions that when you're watching it, you get triggered. You're like, ooh, I don't like hearing that question. I don't think I would appreciate that too much. It does open up a lot of questions for who's replicant, who's not. I think Blade Runner really does come down to the details, and you're right. The more you watch it, the more you're starting to notice. And what's funny is it was like an age-old question, is Deckard a replicant, that they didn't answer until 2049, where they just outright had to come out and say it. What's interesting about it, though, is the more you watch the first Blade Runner, there are certain scenes where you're like, oh, they totally give it away. Like in this scene, there's a shot in his apartment when he's talking to Rachel. I think it's right before he has that awkward kissing scene, which is probably, I'm not a fan of that scene, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But before that, he's behind her talking, and he has this quick where his head, like the light hits his face just right where you see the eyes.
Oh yeah.
It's like a millisecond before he looks away.
The reflection in the...
But you see the gold. Yeah, you see the gold. And so rewatching it, it's just one of those fun things where you're like, I love it when a movie that makes you have questions.
But it's there in front of you.
Yeah, it's there the whole time. Yeah. And I think what's funny about it is that people have been asking that question, is he actually a replicant or not, for so long. Yeah. And it was like, they had already answered your question and you didn't even know. I think that's great writing. To be able to pull that off is fantastic.
Yeah, there's definitely people out there where they're just scanning each frame.
Right.
To find the reflection.
I think it's such a, like, little details like that are great. I love all the dialogue whenever there's an animal where they're like, is it real or is it fake?
Not.
And there's always the like, of course it's fake, or of course it's not real. If I could afford a real snake, you think I'd be doing this? And yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I love that. Just, you can tell that there was a lot put to building this world. Now, it is based on Philip K. Dick's, right? That's his name. Oh crap, I'm gonna mess up the title. It's like Do Robots Dream or something like that.
Of Electric Sheep,
right?
Yeah.
Thank you, the Electric Sheep. Yeah.
Sheep.
Electric Sheep. Words are hard. So they kind of had the world already built for them, but to be able to take that world from the novella and turn it into this movie and to actually put you in this world to suspend your belief. The writing is immaculate in this movie. I will say that. It is on point. It is fantastic. I think what trips it up is when you see that there are 5 cuts of this movie. So it kind of makes it hard to figure out which screenplay you're actually watching.
Yeah. Well, I watched the final cut for this one.
So, right. But then you're like, well, I stick with the final cut. So that's the script that I'm going to base this off of, because they obviously had that script. So the screenplay, the writing is great on this movie. It's so well done. I love the pace. I love how it wants the story and the investigation to be the primary part of the story. Where it's like, we're not relying on
sci-fi,
the action and the extra sci-fi-ness of it. It's he's trying to find these replicants, these Nexus 6, and suddenly he has this like internal conflict halfway through that he struggles with through 2049 if you continue the story into the sequel. Just the writing is so good, man. So good.
I would like to talk a bit more about like that apartment scene between Deckard and Rachel. Just really interesting in terms of whether you think, if you haven't noticed that particular shot, whether you think like Deckard is a replicant or not. Like you get lines from her, Rachel, like, I'm not in the business, I am the business, implying she knows exactly who she is. Then asks, have you ever taken the void conf test on yourself? And Deckard doesn't answer and just kind of falls asleep. Like the little nap he has feels very brief, and he's kind of drinking too. So it's like he's just kind of ignoring her in that moment, or just doesn't want to hear that question. Then when they're at the piano, he says he dreamt music. And then you see kind of a shot of all the score of music papers, you know. And then like Rachel says that she didn't know she could play and didn't know if the lessons she remembered are hers or Tyrell's niece's memories. You know, then Deckard refuses to kind of let her go, and then they kiss, and he tells her what to say. Yes, very questionable, but yeah.
It's like the most intrusive, just awkward scene that leads into a romance ever.
Yeah, but I feel like it definitely feeds into this world and this character. It's not a nice... This is a very brutal world, I think. So I feel like it does work in a way. So then Deckard is keeping his cards very close to his chest, you know, about who he thinks he is. And because of their attraction to each other, has Tyrell designed Rachel just for Deckard, knowing that he's a replicant, you know, just for Tyrell's own social experiment? Or does Deckard even care whether they're both replicants? Does it even matter if they're in love, you know? And replicants, etc. So there's all sorts of questions being asked for me with their relationship. Yeah, so some really kind of really interesting things going on between all these lines and between all these little looks at each other in terms of the acting as well. It's just so rich, and you know, I think if I watch it again, in that scene in particular, I might even see even more details and things again. So so good.
I love... I'm with you on most of that. I still think him like no, you kiss me and tell me you want me. Say it again. It's a little weird. Every time I'm like, come on, man. But everything leading up to that though, with the I dreamed of music, or her asking him, have you ever done the test on yourself? I love how all of that just blends so well from her interview from earlier. You know, it almost feels like a continuation of that, what she would have called him out on. It also, to me, brings up some questions of like, he recognized her being a replicant during the test.
Yeah.
Would that mean that she recognized him as a replicant either when she walked into the room, because she's kind of a higher generation of Nexus? Or did she figure out that he's a replicant and he doesn't know during the test, which made her figure out her own? Because I definitely feel she knew and understand during her test. Oh, I'm a replicant. I think she knew. Just the way that she gets up and leaves, 100% she knew.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But I do like the questions that it brings up between those two of kind of that self-accountability on Deckard. You know, I do take his little nap as him ignoring her and just trying his hardest to not answer her or be a part of the actual conversation, because the conversation will be uncomfortable and it's probably going to make him rethink a lot that he's probably been avoiding his whole existence, which is why I think the ending with Batty is so well done, because I think it all comes flooding into his mind of a full realization and kind of like, I'm stuck with this, which is why, you know, when he sees the unicorn, I love how he's just like, yep, this is it. Like, not only is she getting hunted, I'm being hunted. Like, all right. Yeah, so I love the dialogue. I love how her interview scene blends so well with the apartment scene, even with the awkward kissing and kind of forcefulness that the scene ends with. You're right. The world that they build and show you is brutal. Like you just kind of get that sense of like, oh, crime is rampant, morality is low.
The dark side of his character
so
is
low.
just coming out there.
Yeah, so I don't side with that, saying that it's like justified, but at the same time it's like it makes sense for this world, especially if he's fighting the idea that he's a replicant and he knows that she is. It's kind of that test of superiority, like I'm human, or I'm hoping I'm still human. Yeah, so
and then does it even matter in the end?
Right, does it even matter?
Yeah, I mean, the end is very interesting to me, where Deckard comes back for Rachel and they leave the city, but Deckard finds this mini unicorn origami that Gaff made. And a lot of the discussions between like Deckard and Rachel have been about memories and whether they're real or someone else's memories. Earlier in the film, you have this little scene where Deckard is almost daydreaming, and there's a flashback of this unicorn running through a forest. So the question I have is, how much does Gaff know about like artificial memories? Like, he's not on screen that much, but he certainly doesn't act very human-like. You know, when he does say something, it's not much, very short, snappy sentences. So do all like Blade Runners have this unicorn memory? As Tyrell says, like the use of implanted memories keeps kind of replicant emotions in check. So also in that moment, does Deckard realize he's a replicant in that moment too? You know, Harrison Ford does this little smirk, then pretty quickly he's out, you know, straight to that elevator. So,
time to bail. Out.
Yeah. So it's just really kind of interesting. It's very ambiguous, in my opinion, of just like where the film leaves you with the ultimate questions that the film is asking. Is Deckard a replicant or not? Where do you stand on that scene in particular?
I love how
Gaff,
they conclude it. Yeah. I'm a big fan when movies have kind of abrupt endings like that, where it is a conclusion. It's not like an open conclusion. It's just abrupt of understanding, this story is done. Yeah,
I love that in No Country for Old Men. They do that sort of type of ending where it just stops.
Yeah, it just ends.
Very quietly.
I am, the first handful of times that I saw this, you know, when I was younger and then as an adult, I don't think I ever like formed an actual opinion on all the questions that it asks or makes you ask. Becoming such a fan of it now over the last decade or whatever, I totally think that Gaff, I don't know if he's a replicant himself, but I think Gaff is definitely a part of, he knows so much more about Deckard, and he's chosen on purpose to be the guy to bring Deckard in. And I think Gaff is probably the guy that was supposed to take Deckard out, but felt for him at some point. So lets him in. I think the unicorn origami is a confirmation of, yes, you're a replicant, because I totally know it's already in your head. And I'm actually protecting you and Rachel, you know, because he makes that comment of like, it's a shame she won't live either. Yeah. And he says it having already been at the apartment.
Yeah,
you know, so
it's like giving you a head start.
He's given the head start, and I think that's kind of cool that Gaff is this character who you never really get a good feel for throughout the movie, because he's only on screen a few times, and when he is, it's very short. But I think that's kind of cool to see that compassion that Gaff kind of secretly has, where I'm giving you that head start. You guys got to disappear.
Because he creates these other little bits of origami early in the film, I think, when other replicants die. So,
he makes a human. I can't remember the other. He makes like 4 pieces of origami, 3 or 4 pieces of origami throughout the film. Yeah. And it's always in correlation with a replicant.
Yeah. So it just kind of hits you like when Harrison Ford picks up the unicorn, you're like, oh shit, this is kind of what Gaff is all about. I wouldn't say maybe straight away, but it definitely lingers with you a long time after you've watched it. I would say it's really subtly done. And would I want more of Gaff in the film? Probably not. I think he has just a real kind of intrigue and mystery about that character that really works. See, I wouldn't want more of him to flesh out these answers or these questions even. So I think it's perfectly done, really, with his character.
I think in terms of like the questions, the unanswered questions or the answer questions, I think Blade Runner works really well not answering all the questions. I think if they would have tried to close every book, tie it all off, I think it would have taken away the impact of the movie.
It's really interesting, though, when they were doing press for Blade Runner 2049, that because obviously Ridley Scott was a producer on that, he didn't direct it. Denis Villeneuve directed the sequel, and Ridley Scott flat out just said, "Yeah, Deckard's a replicant." He sees the unicorn and blah blah blah. He's a replicant, but Denis Villeneuve was just like, "No, I think it's definitely left open for interpretation."
Which is funny that he says that during like the press, because 2049 does blatantly answer the question. So it's kind of like, why are you trying to play coy? Everyone already knows.
Yeah.
That
was kind of funny. Interesting and funny lines. I've got a few.
I do laugh uncomfortably during the kiss me, no, tell me you want me scene. I do laugh about that every time. But the one that I laugh, I don't know why. It's like the line has no weight to it. It has really nothing, but I think it speaks volumes for Deckard's character. Is the beginning when he's stuffing his face with noodles and Gaff and the other cops show up and they're telling him like, you got to come with us. And his only response is, I'm eating. I love it. He says it with a mouthful of noodles and he just sounds so like disinterested, like go away. Like, what are you doing?
Let me finish my food first, at least.
Right. I love that. I don't know why. It's such a joy to me to hear every time I watch this. Other than that, I am embracing the cliche.
Oh, yeah.
How can you not love Batty's line at the end of Tears in the Rain? How do you not love that? And what's funny is that wasn't even actually in the script. That was an improv that Rutger Hauer actually did. So brilliant on his part.
Yeah, I've got it here. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
It's so good, and he packs such a wallop with that.
Yeah.
How can you not love that? Of course, that's the best line.
Oh, yeah. I think it surprised me on this rewatch, because I hadn't seen it for a while, actually, before this morning. And he says it very slowly, especially those last few lines. It just, I forgot that he just says it. There's a lot of pauses for silence in that. It's kind of really interestingly paced. There's a few other ones I like from the captain near the start where they're going through all the replicants and he says, "This is Zora. She's trained for an off-world kick murder squad. Talk about Beauty and the Beast. She's both." Was cool. One great one from Harrison Ford to Rachel. I've had people walk out on me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Yeah.
Was good.
I can't remember the direct line, but when he's talking to the snake lady, but he's putting on
Zora,
that character, Zora, I think.
He's
putting on that goofy accent, but him talking to her about like being exploited for her body and stuff as she's naked, dancing with the snake and trying to wash off like the junk from it, cracks me up every time. I just like,
it was so weird as well. I was like, what the hell is happening, man? This is not good. No one would fall for this.
I know. I love his accent during that scene because it reminds me of like kids playing. Not to, I mean, that's a weird connection, but you know what I mean. It's just like,
yeah, she is not fooled at all, and
at all. She even like kind of calls him out. I love how she just goes about her normal routine while he's trying to talk to her, and she's like, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely reminded me. It took me straight back to that accent he did as a Scottish lord in the Last Crusade.
Yeah. From Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
If you are Scottish lord, I am Mickey Mouse.
It's all about the tapestries.
Oh, I love the exchange between Roy Batty and Tyrell. And he says, what seems to be the problem? Death. Death? Well, I'm afraid that's a little out of my jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I want more life, father.
Him calling him father is very
creepy.
Daunting.
Yeah.
Because oh, he's going to kill him. Like, this is his mission, is to kill his creator so that he can be the ultimate being. Absolutely. It's a good reminder that although you feel for Batty at the very end, you also have to keep in mind, like, he is not good. No. So your sympathy needs to be short-lived.
One of the funnier lines from Roy Batty in those last scenes in the house, in that big, grungy, dark, damp house, and he says, 4, 5, how to stay alive. 6, 7, go to hell, go to heaven. It's great.
I laugh at that scene because when he starts doing the rhyme scheme, I always think Freddy Krueger. And every time I'm always like, Freddy's rhyme scheme is better, but this is pretty good.
But I think my favorite line, I would say, is from Gaff near the end. I think you mentioned it briefly already, Dustin, where he says, it's too bad she won't live, but then again, who does? And then ultimately, what's the difference between a replicant and being human when they both can die? It's just a very, like, simple way of, like, ending your film. Yeah, again, just opens up a lot of questions again about this whole situation that these characters are in. Yeah, so good for me.
It is so good. Yeah, Gaff's final line of that, opening the questions and also his kind of like subtle hint of revealing and confirming everything. Yeah. But yeah, my favorite line definitely still comes down to the like tears in the rain, time to die. It's just, oh my God, that's so good. It's just so good.
Screenplay score for you, Dustin. What are you going for?
Well, it's funny that I go on about my favorite line being the tears in the rain, and it wasn't even a part of the script. So I guess I have to not include that into it. But the script is immaculate. So, man, I feel like I got to go with a 9. I think just the writing on this film, especially for that final cut version, which everyone has pretty much unanimously said, like, yep, this is it. I love the detail that the script maintained. I love the writing, the pace, how the embrace of the film noir with a sci-fi twist to it, but without being too sci-fi.
Yeah.
That keeping it grounded, keeping it mix. It's such good writing. It really is. So yeah, I'm going with a 9. It's so good.
Yeah, I think this script is exceptional, and like a lot of the lines, as we said, are beautiful, and the fact that people like us and loads of other people around the world are still kind of debating and talking about this film is always just great to hear, and I think that's just obviously a testament to how good this script is, and certainly pacing wise, it's beautifully paced. It's not too quick. It's not too slow. Yeah, it's just beautifully done. And again, like, I love an ambiguous script, and it's just really kind of interesting just trying to work out the puzzle pieces and putting them together. And like, the puzzle picture can look different for every individual that watches this, I would say. It's just there's so much depth here, there's so much detail, there's so much richness in the writing, and yeah, I just, again, crazy high again for me. So, yeah, 9 point. Oh, 9.7. I just.
Holy hell.
I like it a lot.
You're just like, I will not let the Movie Boners have another winner.
Absolutely
on my show.
Not. No, I was going to go pretty high before we recorded, so.
Should be texting Jake and being like, "Give me your score for this. We're gonna double up on him."
Right, acting. I love the acting from Rutger Hauer, Roy Batty, and Brian James, who plays Leon Kowalski in this kind of icebox genetics eye lab when they interrogate Hannibal Chu. Brian James is pretty silent throughout the scene, and he kind of puts his hand in this freezing water, pulls his hand out, and is just looking at it, like fascinated by what's happening to his hand. Like he acts like he's just subtly reacting to everything that's happening around him for the first time. Yeah. Whereas Rutger Hauer has this very like heightened quality to his acting, like he's in a Shakespeare play all the time. But in a good way, you know. But it's as if he's like the opposite of Brian James and has experienced so much off-world and in this world that nothing surprises him anymore. So he feels like he can just act how he wants to anyone.
Yeah.
Even his father, Tyrell, you know.
He definitely feels like he's the superior being throughout the movie.
You feel like he's contemplating everything at the same time all the time and doesn't feel threatened by anybody, you know, frankly, throughout the whole film. So, yeah, just incredible from him. Both of them as well.
Yeah. I would say, obviously, Rutger Hauer is incredible in this movie because he's so daunting. You brought up a really good point of he always looks like he's contemplating. And I've always taken it as is he contemplating just killing his band of Nexus that are with him? Like, does he ever feel that they're holding him back? Because he kind of looks at Leon like that sometimes, and you wonder about Pris.
He does feel pretty gutted when Pris dies, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's also telling because she was like, now it's just him. Like, their mission has kind of obliterated in his own face. So I think his sorrow for Pris is both like actually sad that she's gone, but also kind of he's dying and her being gone means like he's the last. But his acting is so good in this movie. I love Gaff, Edward James Olmos. He's so good in the tiny amount of screen time that he has. He just does a great job. Oh my gosh, I'm losing her name. Rachel. She's fantastic.
Sean Young.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, very, very subtle performance from her.
Very subtle performance, but it's a powerful.
Very vulnerable. Yeah, very vulnerable at times. And yet, as you say, very, very powerful. And you feel like she is her own replicant, if you will. Just really interesting you really never get a fix on how she's feeling towards Deckard in any moment, I wouldn't say. There's definitely fear in there at times, and vulnerability, but I don't think she's ever overpowered by Deckard emotionally. I know we've talked a lot about that kissing scene, but she never leaves the apartment. So, I mean, she's a replicant as well, so whether she's designed to have strength, I don't know. She hasn't. I don't know, but there's just a lot of intrigue and she has a lot of mystery around that character as well, which I think she portrays really nicely.
Yeah. I think she's definitely one of the stronger performances in the movie. I do have a little bit of a hot take.
Sure.
I don't think this is one of Harrison Ford's better acted roles.
No, I still think he's very good in it.
Good, but I don't think it's one of his best.
No, but certainly with that kind of that scene we've talked about where he pretends to be this weird moral investigator to Zora. That was a little bit jarring, and you do come out of it a little bit tonally. But again, I feel like he's a retired Blade Runner, and he's just trying to pull out all the tricks that he knows, and this is just right at the end of the playbook. If you're talking NFL, for him. So I get what you mean with that. But.
The one that like always kind of pulls me out of the performance is his fight with Leon.
Right.
Actually,
okay.
That one definitely goes from like film noir to awesome, cool film to like, oh, we jumped heavily into like super campy, silly. And I don't know, that scene, his fight with Leon always kind of takes me out of it a little bit. So
it didn't take me out of it in that scene in particular, but I think it just shows that
it's those facial expressions, man. It's those facial expressions that I'm like, okay. But that's one of those scenes to me, and I could be wrong, but it's one of those scenes to me that I get that like Harrison Ford was over it having to deal with everything behind the scenes. And I'm unfortunate. To me, it just feels like maybe that's one of those scenes where he was just like, guys, I'm so done with this. Can we just call it?
Yeah. I feel like he does similar stuff though in things like in Indiana Jones when he's being beaten up by huge dudes in that. So.
But that's a little different because Indiana Jones is supposed to be kind of campy and fun the whole time. So it, like him fighting on the tank, his full body spins. That's hilarious and fun to watch.
Yeah.
Him getting the hell kicked out of him by Leon.
Okay.
I don't know. It just, for some reason, the tone of the movies, they're so different that I don't necessarily need to see the same tone from Indiana Jones like this. Well, I guess Indy came out after this, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, so he's an amazing actor. Like, I am massive Harrison Ford fan. I really am. I think he's one of the all-time greats. I would put him above a lot of other actors that are considered the all-time greats. There's something about this performance that I'm always like, it's so good, and then it's not, and then it's so good. But it's just it seems uneven.
Okay.
For a Harrison Ford performance.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't do anything particularly special, I don't think, but...
True. And maybe that's part of it for me.
I don't think he's required to in this film. Yeah. He's Harrison Ford, he's the guy that carries you through a really dense world of Blade Runner. You have to have some sort of character that is kind of plain, I guess, to have some connective tissue with to drag you through this. Not drag you through, but like to carry you through it, yeah.
Well, I mean, this was before he was like, it was coming off the heels of Star Wars, so people knew him as Han Solo, which is definitely a lot more active of a character. But I mean, this was before he was established as like the finger pointer. We don't get the Harrison Ford finger point in Blade Runner, which is fine because this character doesn't call for that. But yeah, I don't know. He's excellent all the time. There's just something about the unevenness, and it could just be because the editing, having 4 other versions.
Yeah,
maybe the editing is still kind of clunky. It just always strikes me as like, ooh, not one of your best, Harrison. Good, just not one of your best. So,
well, when you think of Blade Runner, you never think of Harrison Ford's performance, to be honest. So
this is true.
Yeah,
true. You think of Rutger Hauer's final lines.
Oh yeah,
that's what you think of.
And also, I think you think of Daryl Hannah. I think she is amazing in this film.
Oh, see, I don't think Daryl Hannah. I always laugh when she shows up. Her hair cracks me up, dude. Her hair cracks me up every time. Okay. When she's sitting on his shoulders and she's like turning him around in her thighs, I laugh every time at those close-ups because the hair just seems to get bigger.
Yeah.
like this is awesome. It's so funny to me.
Well, I think it's interesting, especially when like Harrison Ford is kind of walking slowly up the stairs to Sebastian's apartment, and you get these like tight shots on her with this veil on, and she does this incredible, like, sharp head turn when she hears him coming. Like, she does this weird, like, eye roll thing, just showing the whites of her eyes. And it just kind of freaks you out even before Harrison arrives. And when he does, she's still as anything, and all these other experimental replicants are doing these very strange movements. And when she does jump out, I don't think Ridley Scott does too much to enhance Daryl Hannah, like, jumping out at Ford to shock you either. Mm-hmm. So when, like, Harrison Ford shoots her, like, the way she kind of writhes around on her back,
the like giant freak out that she does
was kind of incredible. And even when, like, Harrison Ford shoots her again, like, that she somehow, like, ups the pace of that writhing. It's kind of unbelievable. Yeah, just kind of insane.
Her like freak out from getting shot. I think you'll appreciate this comment just because we know this was confirmed. It reminds me from Alien.
Okay.
When Ash is like shot up and freaking out, right? And it reminds me of that. And I appreciate that. Yeah. I do. I think the best part of her performance is actually when it's her one-on-one with Sebastian.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Having that kind of, because it always feels like a predator playing with its prey to me. So I think that's cool, that bit is her strongest performance to me in that. The writhing on the floor, I bet she had a blast doing because she got to just flip out. Mm-hmm. And who wouldn't like that, especially if the set was as stressful and annoying for everyone as people claim.
I want to do that scene again, please.
Right. Like, I need to scream about you again.
I need to do the de-stress scene.
Right. I'm always shocked because she is high on, like, the cast list, so on the bill, but she doesn't do a lot in the movie, and she's not in a lot. She doesn't have a lot of screen time, but she's higher up on the bill. So I don't want to take anything from her. I would just say, I don't know that I think Daryl Hannah when I think Blade Runner. I typically think Rutger Hauer in the final line and Harrison Ford, because Harrison Ford is your leading man. He's the guy carrying the whole movie on his shoulders. Oh, yeah. I think that's why I'm a little harder on his performance, because it is dude, you are the central part of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing with that scene with Daryl Hannah when she's, like, really still is that I felt very tense with that. I was just like, oh my God, she's very freaky with her acting. It's just kind of bizarre in a scary way. I kind of agree to a certain extent when she is kind of on top of him. Maybe direction wise, it does look a bit weird. Thinking about it now with that, but
I always try to figure out what they're actually doing, because she's like, they do those close-ups where all you see is her holding the top of his head, his hair, and she's like, and then they show him like smacking his cheeks on her thighs, and the whole time I'm like, this had to have been the weirdest filming day of at least these two's career. I wish they would talk about this more, because it's like, Harrison, you're going to be in her crotch. She's going to be trying to hurt you, but in the least effective way possible.
Yeah. I can totally see Ridley Scott just saying that very matter-of-factly. Like, he's just like
this is going to be a weird day. And then when we finally do the wide shot, it turns out that the whole time that everyone's thought you were standing up, you're actually laying down on the ground. What?
Yeah.
Like, don't look into it. We're just doing it this way. All right. It's the weirdest fight scene. It really is. I laugh every time because I'm like, this had to have been like so awkward for both parties involved, right? Like, it's not a sex scene, but she's she's wearing like a skin colored like leotard, and she's gripping his face and her thighs, but it's not. It's so weird. It's such a weird scene. It's such a weird scene.
Yeah, freaky and weird.
Right.
Favorite performance for you, Dustin? Harrison Ford, right? Okay.
Rutger Hauer is gonna take this one. It's a close second, though, to Sean Young, because her performance of Rachel, I mean, it's actually not as much of a ballpark for Rutger Hauer for me, because she is so good at what she does in this movie. So those two are the best.
Yeah, Rutger Hauer definitely for me as well. He just brings this very unpredictable quality to his acting. You just never know what he's going to say or do in any given scene that he's in. So, yeah, very impressive for me. Acting score, Dustin, though, what are you going for?
Ooh, you're going to be mad at me. As are some people, I think. But that's okay, because it's a movie, and you're over it. Honestly, so I'm going to go kind of low on this one, just because the fact that the leading actor's performance is not the strongest performance in the film is a little... Now, this can happen with other movies, but it's never, like, detracting, whereas I think this one is kind of detracts from the performance of everyone else around him. So that kind of is going to hurt and affect my score on the acting. Man, I don't want to tell you because you're going to be real upset. So let me rethink. I'm going to try and find a middle ground for you.
So Jake is just coming in to...
No, Jake's gone. Jake's gone because I know he would argue me a little bit on this one. But Jake said Red Dawn over Point Break. I'm still trying to figure that out. Man, Red Dawn's great, but come on, dude. Point Break is...
I'm with you with that, to be fair.
Like, what are you doing? I'm going to go with like a 7.6.
That's not as low as I was expecting. So
oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's because I expect stronger performance, even like sillier, smaller, goofier roles from Harrison. He's always on point, and this one just doesn't feel like he's all on point. So
yeah. I don't have a massive problem with Harrison Ford's performance. As I said, I feel like he carries you through this film, and I don't, other than that one scene with Zora, like, he didn't feel particularly distracting, and Rutger Hauer and Daryl Hannah for me are very, very good. Sean Young, very different performance as well compared to Hauer and Hannah. Very subtle, and you feel like you want to just examine her performance over and over to just really dig deep on like where her mind is at as a replicant, etc. So just really, really fascinating, varied performances, but at a very good level of quality for me. So, but again, I don't think this is the acting is not what you come for Blade Runner for. So I will go like an 8.7, mainly for Rutger Hauer, Daryl Hannah, and Sean Young. 8.7. Yeah. Right, let's add up the scores then for Blade Runner, and I'm nervous now.
I wouldn't be.
Well, I'm not good at maths, so...
Me neither. That's why we carry calculators.
Yeah.
All those teachers long ago telling us, you're never going to have a calculator with you all the time. Joke's on you. I think my main question to you, just because I know you, is I would be curious, and maybe this is a different episode, obviously a different episode, but maybe this would be a fun one in the future.
Sure.
Because you're rating Blade Runner so high.
Yeah.
Now I'm really curious to know how you would rate and compare Blade Runner with Alien.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, don't listen to our Alien episode because we were just getting started and the scores are too low. And I definitely want to do Alien again.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, without getting into that, it's another discussion. Blade Runner gets 52.5, which loses And American Gangster wins with 52.8. Thanks, Harrison. Thanks.
Movie Bonerz are 2-0 on Film versus Film.
Yes. So Jake is invited back next time.
Oh man, I can't wait for Jake to hear this episode and be like, wow, they are giving me a lot of hell for Red Dawn. And Dustin needs me at one point, and then Martin needs me at the other point.
Next episode, as Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, I think, is out. We are talking Lord of the Rings films, obviously. Dustin, you have been amazing as always. I love your scoring. I really do. It's really interesting to hear your thoughts on these films. Always a blast. This is your opportunity again to tell me and us about your podcast, and where can we find you, sir?
Well, like I said earlier, you can find us Movie Bonerz with a Z. You can find us pretty much everywhere. YouTube, all the normal podcast platforms. We have been on a little bit of a hiatus for a little bit. Both Jake and I have been focusing on some personal stuff outside of the show, but our great return is coming. So be on the lookout for that. We do also have like a fan club. So if people want to have early access to episodes, we also have a whole series where you get to watch a movie with us and we commentate during the whole thing.
Awesome.
Kind of dissect it a little bit, talk more in depth with what the movies mean to us and our love for certain films. Yeah, so check it out. I just lost my train of thought because why wouldn't I, you know? But yeah, man, this has been an absolute blast. It's always fun talking movies with you, dude. It just genuinely is. So,
awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I can speak for Jake and say thank you, you know, just for having us. He is the one that ultimately picked American Gangster, and I'm glad he did because it beat you, and that's what matters at the end of the day is that we win, you lose. Yes. We're so humble. We're so humble.
I'll win one day.
You will. No, man, this is like genuinely, this is such a joy talking movies with you. I love hearing your perspective on stuff too, because with the exception of the creator, wow,
not great.
Going back and rewatching some of these movies after we've talked about them, and then watch it with like kind of the stuff that you've brought up, it has definitely enhanced the movie watching experience for me with these movies. So it's always a blast, man. I'm sure I'm going to rewatch Blade Runner in like a week or two and be like, dang it, I was harsh. Crap.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Martin.
Right. It's time to say goodbye, people. It's goodbye from Dustin. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Bye.
And it's goodbye from me. The next time Avatar comes on the show, I'm giving it all 10s. Bye-bye.
Oh, harsh. Oh, my God. Wow. Wow.
That's an inside joke. If you know that, then fair enough. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.